Hello and welcome to a very special New York Rangers Eastern Conference Final Report. Along with Tom Quigley, I'm Colin Loughran. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still standing in Quigs. We still have a job. The Rangers defeated the Carolina Hurricanes in Raleigh last night by a score of 6-2. It was all Rangers from the jump. Goals from Adam Fox, two from Chris Kreider, Philip Hedl with one, Andrew Kopp with one, and Ryan Strome with one, rounds out the scoring for the Blue Shirts. They're moving on to that Eastern Conference Final for a date with the defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning. Quigs, all year long, this team has been a roller coaster. What did you make of last night's thriller?
Well, honestly, I think it was a long time coming for this Carolina team. They kind of made it through the first two rounds, really just coasting on that unbeatable at home record, and then just unvictorious on the road. And finally, that came to bite them in the behind when it came to Game 7. But I mean, that's a great team in Carolina, and another obviously great team on the other side of the ice, the Rangers. But I think the Rangers really benefited from finally getting to Antti Ranta, and obviously he got injured last night, and they put in Kochetkov. But the fact that they didn't have to face Freddie Anderson in this series, I think really benefited them. And Carolina had a great defensive showing throughout the entire series, but I think the Rangers offensively, their forwards kind of took the entire series to really figure out the Carolina defense. And in the last two games, it was pretty clear that the Rangers really woke up on the offensive side.
It was a really solid game for the Rangers from the jump. They just looked a step quicker. That was something we talked about after Game 6, was the fact that you might not necessarily dominate Carolina on the forecheck, and I don't think they did that in Game 7, but they were just quicker than them and quicker to get pucks to the net. And I called this one a thriller. Honestly, it wasn't the closest game at all that I've ever seen, but it was a thrill for people that have been associated with the Rangers because nobody thought they were going to go to Carolina and pull off a Game 7, in all honesty. I mean, look at what they did against Boston. They won every home game, as you mentioned, but here we are. We're going to the ECF. Quigs, right off the bat, Lightning in front of you. What are your thoughts about that club? I know myself thinking about it is these guys have championship pedigree, but to do it three times in a row, that would be pretty tough. I'm not sure they're up to the task, especially against a Rangers team that's young and hungry.
I mean, what I will say about this Tampa Bay Lightning team is that a lot of people have doubted them in the past, even doubted them last series. Obviously, they were going against a very tough opponent in their cross-state rivals, the Florida Panthers, but they just ran through them. And obviously, that was on the backs of Andrei Vasilevsky, who's been unheard of this playoffs, especially in the second round. He had a bit of a shaky first round, but as soon as they started playing Florida, what did he let in like 5 goals in 4 games, something like that, some crazy number. So, this Tampa Bay team they're used to this playoff setting. They've won now 10 straight playoff series. And I think that people are saying, yeah, it is hard to three-peat, and it might be one of the hardest things to do in sports. But this team really does like to prove the doubters wrong. And I will say that also about the Rangers, because no one gave them a chance in Game 7 going into Carolina. Obviously, it had been a very physical series, a back and forth series where the Rangers looked absolutely terrible in Game 5 offensively, couldn't get anything going, only managed 17 shots. But then they completely woke up in Game 6, and they carried that momentum straight into Game 7. So this is a Rangers team that has made adjustments on the fly. They're a young team, but they are showing that they're really not afraid of any opponent. And this is going to be the ultimate task to see if they are truly a team that is ready to contend for titles, is to go through the one team that's held that title for the past 2 years. But I would say the biggest thing, the point that stands out for me is Andrei Vasilevsky. He's been unbelievable in net. And the Rangers have they faced Louis Domingue for the most part in the first series. They got a little bit of Tristan Jarry in Game 7, but obviously not the two best goalies in the league by a long stretch. And then, of course, they got another backup against Carolina. So they haven't really faced a goaltender anything close to Andrei Vasilevsky yet. So this is going to be a huge test for them. But the way their offense is heating up right now, I like their chances to at least put together a good effort, and they got home ice advantage, and they have only lost one game at MSG this playoffs. That was the triple overtime playoff opener against Pittsburgh. So, and that easily could have gone their way if it weren't for that no goal call on Filipino. So this is a team that's really tough to beat in New York, and they get to play 4 games there if it goes to 7. So that is something that will definitely work in the Rangers' favor.
Quiggs, you touched on a little bit of everything there on both sides. Rangers, of course, putting together a nice comeback up against Pittsburgh, winning a huge Game 7 in Carolina. The Lightning in their second round dispatched of what was the best offense in the NHL this year. In 4 games, they swept the Florida Panthers. So in the spirit of really breaking down this series, I want to go step by step. Let's start with this defense for both sides. Obviously, the Rangers pairings, Keandre Miller, Jacob Trouba, Ryan Lindgren, Adam Fox, going to specifically look at those top 4 guys on each club because I think they're going to be getting the majority of the ice time. That's something I saw against Carolina. Fox received a majority of the shifts there, as did Lindgren. On the Lightning side of things, you have Victor Hedman, Eric Cernak, Ryan McDonough, and Zach Bogosian. I look at the Rangers defense here and I just see a more gritty group of guys than I do on Tampa Bay side. Obviously, Hedman maybe a little bit sexier on offense than some of the Rangers offensive options, defensive men, but I don't know. I just look at this matchup and I see it going the Rangers' way. It was not like Florida didn't, good catch myself. It wasn't like Tampa didn't play good defense against Florida. See, that's what happens when you have 2 hockey teams in the same state. It wasn't like they were not good at all against the Panthers, but I just didn't see the same type of grit that I saw from the Rangers against a really good Carolina team. Plus, Adam Fox has raised his game to another level in this postseason. I believe he has the most points of any defenseman so far in the tournament. I think the Rangers have the distinct advantage on the defensive side of things here.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. They are a gritty team. And I don't think anybody really embodies that more than Ryan Lindgren, who's been out in and out all playoffs with different injuries, but he keeps coming back. And you saw him blocking shots when they were up 5-1 in the third period last night. I mean, this guy just he puts it all on the ice every time he goes out there. And he obviously has the heart of a champion because the way that he just keeps getting dealt terrible blows with the lower body injury, but he keeps getting back on the ice. And he is definitely one of the hearts and souls of this Rangers defense and team in general. But Adam Fox as well is another key point to this defense. He's probably, if not the best offensive defenseman in the playoffs, he has been definitely one of them. And he got it all started last night with that goal. It was a beautiful snipe on a bit of a screen, but that, I mean, without him, they don't have so much of this offensive pressure that they've been able to put on Carolina, at least in the last 2 games. And then you got Jacob Trouba, who brings such a physicality to this Rangers defense. And, there's a lot of areas where the Rangers just have not been leading either of their first 2 opponents in their first 2 series. I'm pretty sure most nights they do not lead on the shot board. Most nights they do not lead in the draws. They have just not been winning nearly as many faceoffs as their counterparts, but where they do always lead is in the hits category, and they bring that pressure. You saw Jacob Trouba with a massive hit on Domi in game 4 that really turned the tides in that one, and that was really, they needed that win in order to go back to Carolina evened up. So there's a lot of members of this defensive stalwart in the Rangers that really are going to carry them, I think, throughout this playoffs, because it is their offense that has been lacking at times. But the defense, and of course Igor, the biggest defender of them all between the pipes, has really kept the Rangers in all of these games, and it's been very few and far between, other than games 3 and game 4 against the Penguins, where the Rangers really had no chance in a game, and that's a lot to do with their defense.
Adam Fox with 5 goals, 13 assists for 18 points during this playoff run. The battle of the Blue Liners is going to be something to watch for sure. But let's be honest, everyone will be paying attention to the forwards in this game, especially considering how deep the Rangers truly are. Want to look at their top line. Kreider, Zivanejad, Vetrano, those are the guys that we've come to know and love, the big bad boys up top. Lightning, though, they're pretty good too. Stamkos, Cirelli, and Kucherov. See, this is the one that gets a little bit tricky for me because I look at that top line for the Lightning and I just see experience. The Rangers have a little bit of that too with Kreider, but really not with Zivanejad and really not with Vetrano. They're the type of guys that have been around the league for a little bit, but maybe don't have the type of playoff experience of a guy like Stamkos. I could see that going the Lightning's way in terms of a 1-to-1 matchup, especially when they have Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely so much to be said for Tampa and how they've, like I said before, 10 straight playoff series wins in the past 3 years. It's hard to really fathom that kind of number, but that kind of experience is really it's hard to make up for that in youthfulness, which the Rangers have a ton of. But that it's just really hard to battle with the experienced players, the players that know how to win in these types of games. It's going to be a very tough matchup for the Rangers in every single facet of the game. So if they're able to get past this team, it's kind of like the sky is the limit. But obviously you got to get through the defending champs before you can get anywhere else. So the offense for the Tampa Bay Lightning, very scary. It's going to be a very interesting matchup though, because the Rangers, obviously that top line has been fantastic, especially in these last 2 or 3 games where Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider have really stepped up. Frank Vetrano, a really underrated pickup that they got at the trade deadline. He's been fantastic in the playoffs as well. But if the kid line is starting to wake up, I mean, obviously Philip Hedl has been all over the map. Alexis Lafreniere, back to what he's doing, or what he was, showing signs of that he could be in the regular season. He's really starting to play well, and it's going to be exciting to watch all of these players kind of match up, because you have just a wealth of experience in the playoffs on one side, and basically for most of the players on the Rangers, this is their first playoff run. They haven't been to the playoffs since 2017. I think Mika Zibanejad was on that team as his first year with that team, and before he was at the Senators, and they didn't really have much playoff experience there. You mentioned Chris Kreider is probably the one guy on the Rangers, other than perhaps Barclay Goodrow, who is a Lightning member for the past 2 years, who has had this much playoff experience. So, it's going to be an interesting dichotomy, but I think that it really could go either way, because there is somewhat of a fatigue that this Lightning team must be feeling, because it's not just that they've been to 3 straight Stanley Cups, 2 straight Stanley Cups. This would be their third if they were to win this series. In 2020, that was a very, very late playoffs, because it was in the bubble. It was in July and August, I believe. So these guys have just really had very little rest since the beginning of this incredible run that they've been on. So they've had about a week and a half now to rest between these last 2 series, but it's going to be really an interesting show on ice, and I can't wait to watch it.
It's going to be interesting for sure. I think we're a little bit split on who we see having the advantage between the forwards. I'll say this much: that kid line could make a huge difference. I know we talked about the big boys up top, but Hedl with a goal last night. He's on that kid line with Kakko and Lafreniere. Those 2 guys have been really quick. They were really quick against Pittsburgh, and they amped up their game against Carolina late in the series. I think the kid line can make all the difference in terms of spacing in this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of players, or not a lot of lines in the NHL that have the aggregate speed that all these guys have, and they're all under 23. It's insane that these guys are so far in the playoffs that they've stayed together. I think I love that they keep them together, because it's hard to compete when you got, like, it's not even your top line that's just running circles or skating circles around not your own team's best pairing out there. So it's definitely, it can be a bit draining on a defense to have to face the top dogs like Mika, like Chris Kreider, like Frank Vetrano, and then your third or second or fourth line is just these three guys who are absolutely explosive on the ice. Filipino has been heating up so much. Can't say enough about him and the way that he's grown throughout this season. I remember, heading into the trade deadline being like, Filipino could be a piece that he hasn't really blossomed into, the star that we might think that he would have been. So I was saying, hey, if there's anybody who should be first line on the trade block, I think Filipino should be up there. But man, I've changed my mind about him because he's just been fantastic for us in the playoffs. I think that he'll continue to show signs of growth in this series, unless, of course, Vasilevsky does what he just did to the Panthers. I think I said they allowed 5 goals in the last series. Yeah, I was way off. They allowed 2 goals in 4 games, which is unbelievable. Hats off to him. He's been playing fantastic. We'll see if he can keep that up in this series.
Certainly, the battle of the forwards will be much about puck control, just like it was in Carolina. Tampa Bay this year, not as good at puck control as Carolina was. That makes me feel very confident for the Rangers. Tampa Bay 12th in Corsi percentage. That means they were not that great compared to other teams at controlling the puck. Still towards the top of the NHL, but among playoff teams, kind of towards the bottom of the barrel when you really think about it. But Quigs, you mentioned it before. Everyone, and I mean everyone on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I'm sure MySpace is talking about it too, if that's even still a thing. It's going to be about Igor Shesterkin and Andrei Vasilevsky. We can talk about the defense. We can talk about the forwards. I guarantee you there's going to be people that skip through this report just to hear us talk about Igor versus Vasilevsky in the crease. Man, am I excited for this one. Andrei Vasilevsky, by many considered the best goalie in the game right now. Igor, of course, had something to say about that this season, but Vasilevsky's playoff record speaks for itself. This run, he's been excellent too. No surprise there. 8-3, a .932 save percentage, swept Florida, a very good offensive team, as we were talking about down there. I don't know how I would pick who has an edge here. I'm very tempted to say it's Shesterkin based on he played sooner. He's not coming off of a long rest. Vasilevsky's kind of been sitting at home for a little bit now, but I still have to respect that playoff resume. I would love to give Igor an edge, but at the moment, I have to see how it all unfolds. I will say this, Igor will be helped by having home ice advantage.
Yeah, definitely. The only 2 playoff games this season where he really struggled were both in Pittsburgh, and he was getting a pretty much an earful from those Pittsburgh fans. But the way he's turned around this playoffs has been really remarkable. And there wasn't a single game in this last Carolina series where he looked like he was overmatched by a really good Carolina team, a really good offense that really they had trouble with him. And I think that obviously he's had the best goaltending season of this season. And he may be the Hart Trophy winner for all we know by the end of it. But I still have to give the edge to Andrei Vasilevsky. And that's simply because when it matters most, he plays his best. And Igor's been fantastic. But we have so many examples of Vasilevsky just stepping up in the biggest games. And he's done it over the last 2 playoff runs. He's doing it a heck of a job this playoff run again. So the wealth of experience there might just flip the needle towards him. But I will say that Igor is a fantastic goalie. I think clear and ahead, these are the 2 best goalies in the NHL, especially this playoffs. And it'll be fantastic to watch them. 2 Russian goalies. It's going to be quite the battle. And I think that it's tough because we're talking about the offenses for these 2 teams and how they're heating up and how they're looking great. But it's hard to imagine that either of them get the best of either of these goalies because they've just stepped up throughout the entire playoffs. They've played their best. Igor has played his best in these couple game 7s that he's played. I mean, last night he didn't let up a goal until the third, or maybe it's the second period. I don't know. But the 2 goals that he let up were, kind of an afterthought with how high or how great the Rangers were playing, how far away the score was at the time. He was fantastic last night through most of the beginning of the early parts of the game. And he was great in game 7 against Pittsburgh too. So, these are, this is when it comes down to it. It's the Eastern Conference Finals. This is where the pressure is highest. And these two goalies absolutely thrive off that. Unfortunately, Vasilevsky has more of a resume for that. So I will give him a slight edge in the goaltender sphere. But really, every kind of prediction that we've made about the Rangers this playoffs has gone out the window because they constantly prove the doubters wrong. So who knows?
Igor Shesterkin 8-5 with a .928 save percentage during this playoff run. Quigg, something that I have considered when thinking about this series is the fact that the Rangers might have to change their offensive strategy just a little bit to maybe get Vasilevsky off his game. I know they're the type of team that likes to wait for that perfect shot. It has certainly made a lot of Garden fans feel inclined to go, shoot, like just please shoot the puck. But there might be something to the idea of just throwing pucks at the net against Vasilevsky and hoping for a kind rebound. I could really see that second line coming up with some big plays because of that. Panarin, Kopp, Strome, those are the type of guys that are willing to do that type of thing, maybe a little bit more than that top line with Kreider.
Yeah, I think the Rangers offense woke up particularly because they started feeding off that idea to just throw pucks at the net. But of course, that was against Antti Raanta, who, as it was mentioned before the broadcast started for Game 7, he had never started 11 straight games in his entire career, and he did that last night. It was his 11th straight start in the playoffs, and all they really needed to do to get to him was to start throwing just a much higher volume of pucks on net, and it worked out. This is a guy who that might not be the best strategy against, or at least it might not be as fruitful as it was against a backup goaltender for Carolina. But Vasilevsky is such a big presence in net. I think what they really need to do is they have to have Kreider on his game. He's got to do what he's been doing all season and just own the crease in front of the net, at the sides of the net, and just kind of try to tip the puck in, because it's not gonna be the perfect shot that goes in against Vasilevsky. It's gonna be random bounces. It's gonna be a lot of it's going to take high volume. So I agree with you there. I think that they do have to get a higher volume of shots on net, but they have to be sneaky about it. They got to be chippy, and I don't think it's a perfect shot that's going to end up scoring the big goals for them. It's going to be those gritty second chance opportunities, the rebounds, and the redirects in front of the net. And Chris Kreider, I think, will thrive off that. He's only 2 goals away from from tying the Rangers franchise record for playoff goals. So he'll definitely be looking to add to those stats, maybe tie that record. And the way he's going to do it is by playing to his game, which he's, kind of blossomed into an elite scorer in the NHL because of it.
Just get the puck in the net any way you can. That's the name of the game against these two goalies. Quiggs, we've talked defensemen, we've talked forwards, we previewed the goalie matchup. What do you got in this series?
I got to stick with the Rangers, but I think this one goes deep. I think it either goes the distance or maybe it's wrapped up in 6 games. The only thing is the way the Rangers have played at home versus where they've played on the road has been pretty stark. I mean, they've won the road games that they've had to in these past 2 series, Game 6 in Pittsburgh, Game 7 in Carolina. But the way that they feed off the home energy, the crowd's energy at Madison Square Garden, has really shown on the ice. So I think that if this goes 7, I like the Rangers. If it goes 6, I might like the Lightning. Obviously, it's going to be such a hard fought series. And a lot of people picked Florida last series, and the Lightning just swept them out of the water. So that could happen, but I'm going to stick with the Rangers because every time that I've said they couldn't do it, they went and did it. And I think that, maybe they're a year away, maybe they're 2 years away, but the way they've played in this playoffs, I mean, it's really hard to pick against them. I'm going to go Rangers in 7.
I've been a skeptic, as you know, since day one. I can't be a skeptic any longer. That win in Carolina was very impressive. Give me the Rangers in 7 with home ice, with a potential game 7 at Madison Square Garden. They don't quit, man. Anytime I see a team like this one that just doesn't give up, I like their chances, especially against a team like Tampa that might be a little spoiled now. There might be that mentality that we're entitled to get to the Cup final because we are the glorious Lightning. Give me the Rangers. Give me the guys from New York.
I mean, we've been looking for quit everywhere around New York, but we can't find any. Apparently, there's just no quit in New York.
No quit in New York, baby. That's the story of these New York Rangers. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final tomorrow, 8 p.m. at Madison Square Garden. It's going to be a fun one. This has been your conference final New York Rangers report. Along with Tom Quigley, I'm Colin Loughran saying good night. This has been a production of WFUV Sports.